After the defeat at New Vega, the UW had all but given up. The coalition military had been defeated, and now the Savages were united. Casper and Tyrus went back to what was still human-controlled space and hammered out a new plan. Casper was the politician, where Tyrus was the general. They had to create something that would be cohesive enough and last long enough to defeat the Savages. However, the UW didn't like this new Legion because it was run by the war criminal Tyrus Rechs. It was rumored that the Legion was going to hit the Savages, and when they did, they would lose. And as far as the UW was concerned, good riddance. Some UW diplomats even attempted to contact the Savages and warn them. Good thing the Savages weren't listening. Every able-bodied human either hearing about a planet being lost to the Savages or losing their own and wanting to do something about it, jumped at the chance to get back at the Savages. So there was no shortage of new recruits, and if someone washed out of Tyrus Rex's impossible training, they could serve just fine somewhere else in the military, and it was Casper's job to find a good fit for them. Tyrus and Casper were building a frontline force capable of standing up to the Savage Horde, but even the Legion would need combat support, medics, a Legion Navy, etc. The first Legion candidates were in fact most of the survivors that had braved the trip with Tyrus to the Trigger Nuke near the end of the first battle for New Vega. Ones like Wildman the Sniper and Command Sergeant Major Andrus. Tyrus Rechs was a hard man. On the planet Hardrock, Tyrus Rex's training was brutal, and Legion candidates literally died attempting it. However, their deaths weren't in vain. Tyrus used those deaths to motivate the others. Due to his first-hand experience on the Moira, Tyrus knew what they were up against, what it would take to beat the Savages. But before they could become Legionnaires, they had to first become Rangers. The first group to graduate was called the 75th Legion, which was General Rex's preference. Of those who went with Tyrus to plant the Trigger Nuke, there was one that didn't actually try to join the Legion, Donald McAfee. He was needed elsewhere. He spent his time on Hardrock doing other things the Legion needed, building things that the Legion could use against the Savages based off captured Savage tech, like the LCOM and the N1 rifle. In the first battle of New Vega, the weapons the United World's coalition military used were woefully inadequate. The guns they used worked against rebel human forces, but against even a single Savage Marine, most of the time it took multiple shots, or even sometimes entire magazines. Whereas the N1 rifle packed quite a punch and could bring down a Savage Marine with much greater efficiency, which would make quite a difference when they returned. Tyrus had not actually blown the Trigger Nuke he had left on New Vega. After saving Wildman from the food storage, Tyrus had realized that all the captured populace had also been put into food storage. But in order to rescue those people and take out the Savage threat at New Vega, they needed an edge. This edge was Savage technology on board a Savage mini-hull called the Brentwood. The Legion candidates who survived and helped to take over the Brentwood would become the first Legionnaires. 100 of these new Legionnaires were chosen for the no-fail mission to retake New Vega, to prove that the Savages could be beaten. 1 year later, they would return to New Vega and take it back or die in the attempt. Aeson Ford, formerly Legion Candidate 330, aka Sergeant Fast, now Lieutenant, was in Strike Force Dagger, headed towards LZ Intruder. Strike Force Dagger was a 20-man team of commandos on a captured Savage Light Explorer, dubbed the Tombstone, a gift from the Brentwood, which was disguised to look like a Savage ship on the run from the rest of Casper's ragtag human fleet, which had returned one more time to try to rescue their comrades in the food storage. By the way, Lieutenant Ford is the originator of KTF. He was trying to motivate his fellow commandos on board this Savage Light Explorer while they were inserting into LZ Intruder. He told his fellow Legionnaires to kill them first, and to help them remember it, he shortened it to KTF. The Defiant and the rest of her rebel fleet with Admiral Sulla on board were to stay behind and keep any new Savage threat from space at bay, while Strike Force Dagger was to take out Objective Guard Dog, which would then allow the assault frigate Chang to land at LZ Victory. Objective Guard Dog was assumed to be an orbital defense platform, and it seemed powerful enough to take out the Chang. So, Strike Force Dagger had to take it out, or, if nothing else, at least temporarily disable it to give the Chang a window long enough to arrive and bring in the remaining 80 Legionnaires. The humans had named this Savage tribe the Calorie Hoarders, and with one-shot drones over the last year had confirmed that the Savages had torn down the old city and the ruins from the battle and built new buildings and new structures and who knows what else. But also confirmed their suspicions that the colonists were not all dead, but in stasis in those pods under the ground. So the plan, convince the Savages that the humans were after their food supply. But actually the humans' plan was to control Junction 8 and withstand the assaults that would come from SR-6 and U-1, until the Savages gave up and in frantic desperation would go for Killzone Alpha. Junction 8, main access tunnel into the New Vega Underground built atop Hilltop District. Here, with the smaller tunnel leading to back door at their rear. three massive tunnels met. The first was what New Vega's original planners and builders had called the primary underground line U1, the central artery through the very heart of Old Colony and then out into the city itself, emerging to become Main Route 1 once above the surface. The other two tunnels didn't match U1 in size or scope. The first was Sub-Route 6, an additional access way designed to alleviate congestion. It led to a myriad of deeper warrens, most of which had been sealed by the Savages. The other was that Warehouse Access Service Way, or Warehouse Way, meant to provide quick cargo transportation corridor to a central distribution hub, Warehouse 1. Warehouse 1, where all the colonists were in the calorie storage. Killzone Alpha. After a long circumventing route, this reservoir is a choke point to access Warehouse 1. This reservoir would be set up by the sappers to completely destroy the Savage attacking force when they finally took this route. Here is where the human force would make its last stand. After Lieutenant Ford and his legionnaires successfully take out the orbital defense gun, the Baron and his fellow fighters have their hands full defending the Chang during its descent to LZ Victory. The Chang only has one ship-to-ship missile, also known as an SSM, which it uses to clear a landing spot right next to the hilltop. Objective Backdoor is the new entrance they create to the labyrinth below hilltop, Old Colony. Strike Force Shield includes Tyrus Rechs and the remaining 80 Legionnaires on board the Chang. After the Chang lands, Strike Force Shield makes entry into Hilltop and then has to gain Junction 8 before the Savages do. As soon as Strike Force Shield arrives at Junction 8, the first real Savage attack with 200 Savage Marines hits them but fails. 2 hours later, Savages attack with 2,000. They try to soften up the Legionnaires with rockets and gas and then rush. However, between attacks, the Legionnaires had used cranes and other stuff to stack up the construction boxes and whatever else they could find to fortify their defensive position. When the Savages came in, the Legionnaires from 4th and 3rd platoons set up interlocking fields of fire and were able to mow down the incoming Savages. The Legionnaires had blocked or caved in all routes except one, which was a direct route from Backdoor to Junction 8, and were using this to resupply their force with ammo and removing the wounded. Captain Milker was in charge of keeping the Legionnaires at Junction 8 and Killzone Alpha supplied, and evacuating the wounded. He came out of the protected area to watch one of the deceptions the Legionnaires had set up. This deception was holograms of the former colonists leaving and getting on board the Chang, which they hoped would help convince the Savages of the goal of the humans was to free the colonists. On the third Savage charge at Junction 8, Tyrus Rechs is killed and almost all the rest of his men. After Tyrus Rechs passed away, command had transferred to Captain Milker. The medics pull the dead and wounded back, and Captain Milker figures that with the 4 Legionnaires he has left, the medics and their security team, he can probably hold Junction 8 for another hour. While the main force of Legionnaires is trying to distract the cavalry hoarders with holograms and hand-to-hand fighting at Junction 8, the real objective is Objective Madhouse. Lieutenant Ford, Donald McAfee, and 9 Legionnaires from the original 20 that survived attacking the orbital defense gun went from there not to the battle at Hilltop or to help Black Horse, but to the uplink pylon. The cavalry hoarders, after realizing that the humans were going to get all of their food supply, would upload themselves at the uplink pylon, all of the non-military and elites. Once the cavalry hoarders got wind of the uplink pylon being attacked though, if any were left, planned to board the last Savage Hulk that was on the ground and take off, to meet back up with the others who had already uploaded and rebuild their strength and live to fight another day. Except Tyrus Rechs had other plans. Tyrus Rechs comes back to life. He wasn't all the way dead. And instead of retaking command, he leaves it to Captain Milker. He instructs him to go ahead and detonate Junction 8 so it is completely unusable and reroute the Savages to Killzone Alpha, because there's no other option. The Savages didn't go for the plan as fast as he thought they would, but plans never survive first contact with the enemy, especially not with the Savages. Tyrus Rechs then heads over to get the trigger nuke. The Savages had left it alone after realizing what it was and being smart enough not to touch it. By this point, all the Savages who had planned to run away had either all uploaded into the uplink pylon or boarded the last remaining Savage Hulk on the ground, which was taking off. Tyrus was able to get the trigger nuke on board the Tombstone, and they were then able to fly over to the departing Savage Hulk, plant the trigger nuke, and get away before it exploded. After the Savage Hulk exploded, except for small pockets of resistance, the Second Battle of New Vega was over. Thus ends the Savage Wars Trilogy.